Let's talk about the spiritual world for a minute. What if I told you that our common picture, God, angels, demons, us, is a huge oversimplification? Today, we are going to dive into the Bible's actual depiction of it all, a world that's buzzing with activity, filled with councils, armies, and a cosmic political drama that honestly changes everything. So, when you try to picture the biblical spiritual world, what comes to mind? For most of us, it's a pretty simple setup, right? Yeah, it's usually something like this. You've got God way up top, humans down here on Earth, and then a few angels and demons kind of floating around in between. But the biblical writers saw something way more complex, way more populated. This simple diagram, you could call it a flattened worldview. So, how do we unlock this more, let's say, ancient view? Well, it all starts with one single, super important Hebrew word that gets misunderstood all the time: Elohim. Now, you've probably heard Elohim as just another name for God. But in its original world, it wasn't a name at all. It was a category. Think of it less like a name and more like a job title, or even a location, inhabitant of the spiritual world. And this right here leads to a really important distinction. The God of the Bible, Yahweh, is an Elohim. Of course, he lives in the spiritual realm. But, and this is the absolute key, not all Elohim are Yahweh. Seriously, just letting that one fact sink in changes how you read huge portions of the Bible. Okay, so if the spiritual world is actually filled with other Elohim, who in the world are they? Well, it's time to meet the members of God's divine administration, also known as the heavenly host. The biblical writers actually had a whole vocabulary to talk about these beings, and these aren't just different ways of saying angel, they really represent different roles within God's heavenly government. Let's do a quick run-through. First up, you have the Bene Elohim, which means sons of God. Now, these are not humans. According to the book of Job, they were around before humanity, and were actually there when the world was created. They basically function as God's heavenly court, his administrative staff. Next are the Kedoshim, or the Holy Ones. Now, when we hear holy, we usually think morally perfect, but here it means set apart for a specific divine purpose. These beings belong to God's team, but as we're about to see, that doesn't mean they'd always stay on the team. Then you've got the term Sava'ath, or hosts. This gives us this picture of an organized army, a celestial assembly. It's why one of God's most famous titles is Yahweh of Hosts. He is the commander-in-chief of this entire spiritual government. So what does this all add up to? It means that for the biblical authors, that space between God and humanity was anything but empty. It was a bustling, organized cosmic government filled with real, personal beings who had real jobs. But this divine administration wasn't exactly perfect. And this is where the story gets really dramatic. It turns into a cosmic political saga of delegation, corruption, and eventually, judgment. Okay, so here's the plot in a nutshell. God gives authority over the nations to members of his divine council, but they go bad. They become corrupt, they rule unjustly, and they trick humanity into worshiping them instead of the true God. All of a sudden, idolatry isn't just a simple religious mistake, it's an act of political treason. You're pledging allegiance to a corrupt spiritual official. And this rebellion isn't some obscure idea either. In Psalm 82, God literally calls a meeting of his divine council, and he confronts these corrupt Elohim face to face. He says, I said, you are gods, but you're going to die like men. He's acknowledging their divine status, but he's also condemning them for totally failing at their job. They might be powerful, sure, but they are not the ultimate power, and they are absolutely accountable. This whole cosmic conflict sets the stage for the entire New Testament. The story of Jesus is framed as the ultimate answer to this heavenly rebellion and all the chaos it caused on earth. And the New Testament writers carried this worldview forward without missing a beat. When you read their letters and hear them talk about rulers, authorities, and cosmic powers, the archaea, exousiae, and cosmocratores, they are not just being metaphorical. They're pointing right back to these same spiritual beings. The cosmic conflict is still on. So this is the world Jesus steps into. His entire life and ministry are a direct confrontation with these corrupt powers. His death and resurrection aren't just about forgiving sins. They are the decisive battle that breaks their illegal reign. And his ascension to the throne? That's the moment the one true king reclaims authority over all of creation. Okay, this is a fascinating cosmic drama, for sure. But so what? Why does this actually matter? How does understanding this ancient worldview change how we see the main story of the Bible? Well, it matters because in this framework, salvation is a much, much bigger story. It's not just about getting individual souls into heaven. It's about the complete restoration of cosmic order, reclaiming both the world we can see and the world we can't, all under the rightful rule of their creator. And this leads to an absolutely mind-blowing destiny for humanity. See, the ultimate goal isn't just to go live in heaven. In this view, redeemed humans are adopted into God's family to replace the corrupt divine rulers and to partner with him in governing the new creation. We get a promotion. And that leaves us with a final, pretty powerful question. If the biblical story is really this big, if our ultimate destiny is to one day partner with God in running his creation, how should that change the way we live our lives right now?